The sun shone brightly over the university campus, casting a warm glow on the crowd that had gathered for the graduation ceremony. Families, friends, and students filled the large outdoor stadium, buzzing with excitement and laughter. There was an air of celebration, with colorful banners fluttering in the wind and balloons tied to railings swaying gently. Somewhere among the crowd, a young woman sat quietly on the bleachers, her posture slightly stiff as she watched the festivities from a distance. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, perfectly suited for the occasion. Her hair was neatly styled and her shoes shone under the sunlight. Yet despite the careful attention to her appearance, there was a subtle heaviness in her eyes, a hint of sadness that contrasted sharply with the joyous atmosphere around her. While others laughed and hugged, she remained in her seat, quietly clapping whenever her classmates were recognized on stage. The young woman was the daughter of a very successful CEO, someone known in the business world for his achievements and influence. Money and status surrounded her life, but in that moment none of it seemed to matter. She had spent her entire university journey surrounded by people, yet she had never truly felt connected to anyone. Invitations to parties and gatherings had come frequently, but genuine friendships had always eluded her. Her family had been supportive in their own way, but her father's busy schedule often left her feeling invisible. And today, at her graduation, that feeling weighed heavier than ever. As the ceremony went on, the crowd erupted with cheers for each graduate who walked across the stage. Friends and family members called out names, some waving phones and cameras to capture every moment. The young woman clapped politely for her peers, but no one in the sea of faces called out to her. She scanned the stadium, searching for a familiar face, someone who had genuinely cared for her beyond her family name. But there was no one. She swallowed the lump in her throat and looked down at her hands, fidgeting slightly as if to keep herself occupied. A group of students nearby were laughing and sharing selfies, capturing memories that she could only watch from a distance. Their joy was contagious, and she could not help but feel the sting of isolation. She had imagined this day differently in her mind, picturing friends cheering for her, smiles all around, and a feeling of being truly celebrated. Instead, she felt like a spectator to everyone else's happiness. Despite the crowd, the young woman felt the weight of silence around her. Conversations floated in the air, full of excitement and inside jokes she did not share. Families embraced and children ran around with balloons in their hands. Every laugh she overheard made her heart ache a little more. She realized that the applause and cheers from strangers could never replace the warmth of someone who genuinely cared about her achievements. Her eyes wandered across the stadium again, resting briefly on a section filled with families who had come together to celebrate. Parents held their children proudly, siblings whispered congratulations, and friends exchanged hugs and laughter. She could not help but feel a pang of longing for that kind of connection. It was not that she wanted attention or admiration. She simply wanted to feel seen, to have someone acknowledge her presence not because of her family name but because she was herself. She adjusted the strap of her dress, trying to keep her composure. Occasionally, she smiled politely at someone who glanced her way, but there was no real recognition in the smiles she received. People saw her, yes, but they did not notice her. Her heart ached with the realization that she had spent so much time trying to fit in, only to feel more alone as she achieved one of the most important milestones of her life. The ceremony continued, with speeches that praised the graduates' hard work and determination. The young woman listened politely, appreciating the words but feeling disconnected. The speaker mentioned the importance of support systems and the role of friends and family in achieving success. She could not help but think about her own journey, realizing that while she had been surrounded by luxury and resources, the emotional support she craved had always been scarce. Nearby, a few students glanced in her direction, whispering to each other, but none approached. She understood the social dynamics all too well. People often assumed that she had it all: wealth, opportunities, and a privileged background. They did not see the loneliness beneath the surface, the quiet moments of self-doubt, or the nights spent wishing for someone to genuinely care. Her life seemed perfect from the outside, but inside she felt an emptiness that no amount of money could fill. As the graduates were called one by one to receive their diplomas, she watched silently. Each name announced brought applause, smiles, and pride. Some students ran to embrace their families, while others posed for pictures with friends. She clapped for them, her hands trembling slightly, feeling both happiness for their joy and sorrow for her solitude. She imagined how it would feel if someone did the same for her, not out of obligation, but out of genuine pride and affection. The sun continued to shine, and the heat of the day made the stadium feel both lively and overwhelming. She reached for her water bottle, taking a small sip, and tried to focus on the small moments. The way the wind rustled the banners, the laughter of children nearby, the bright colors of the graduates' robes. Yet her mind kept drifting back to the absence of meaningful connection. She had achieved so much academically, yet in this moment, she felt invisible. A gentle breeze passed through the stadium, carrying with it the scent of freshly cut grass and the faint aroma of food from nearby vendors. The sounds of the ceremony, the applause, the speeches, the laughter felt distant, as if she were observing from behind a glass wall. She felt disconnected from the celebration, a silent observer in a world that seemed full of life and warmth she could not reach. Her thoughts wandered to her father, the CEO. He had called that morning to congratulate her, promising to attend the ceremony, but a sudden business emergency had kept him away. She understood his obligations, yet she could not help but feel the sting of disappointment. She had always known that her father's time was precious and that his presence was rare, but she had hoped that this milestone, this special day, would be different. And now, sitting alone in the bleachers, she felt the full weight of her solitude. Despite the sadness, she maintained a calm exterior, adjusting her posture and ensuring her dress remained neat. She did not want to draw attention to her loneliness. She simply wanted to get through the day with dignity. She reminded herself that this was a moment she had worked hard for, a culmination of years of effort and dedication. Yet the recognition she had longed for, the emotional connection that could have made this day complete, remained out of reach. As the ceremony moved forward, she noticed small gestures from those around her. A friend helping a fellow graduate with a cap, parents taking pictures, siblings cheering. These moments highlighted what she had been missing: simple acts of care, attention, and presence. She realized that while her life had been filled with opportunities, it had been lacking in these small, human connections that made achievements truly meaningful. Time seemed to stretch, each moment of applause and celebration reinforcing her sense of isolation. She shifted slightly, looking around the stadium for any sign of someone who might share a genuine smile or a word of encouragement. But the bleachers remained distant, filled with strangers whose joy did not extend to her. She felt a quiet ache, a longing for someone to see her not as the CEO's daughter, but as a young woman who had worked hard, who had dreams, fears, and feelings just like anyone else. As the ceremony neared its end, she took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She had faced challenges and achieved success on her own, and in that sense she felt a quiet pride. But the pride was tinged with melancholy, a reminder that accomplishments alone could not fill the void left by the absence of genuine human connection. She remained seated, hands folded neatly in her lap, eyes scanning the crowd one last time, silently wishing for a moment of recognition, a smile from someone who truly cared. The ceremony concluded, and the graduates began to throw their caps in the air, celebrating their hard-earned success. She joined in the tradition, smiling faintly as her cap soared above her. Yet even in that moment of shared joy, she felt a subtle distance, a reminder that she had experienced this milestone mostly alone. The cheers and laughter around her could not fully bridge the gap she felt inside. She watched as graduates hugged friends and family, taking photos and sharing moments she had imagined for herself. She remained in her seat, quietly observing, her thoughts a mixture of pride in her achievements and longing for a sense of belonging. The day was beautiful, the ceremony impressive, and the atmosphere filled with excitement, yet for her, it was marked by a quiet solitude that few could see. As the crowd began to disperse, the young woman remained seated for a few moments longer, taking in the surroundings. She looked at the empty space beside her, imagining how it might feel to have someone sit there, someone who would offer a genuine smile, a kind word, or a shared laugh. She sighed softly, letting her shoulders relax, realizing that even in moments of solitude there was a quiet strength within her. She had faced challenges, overcome obstacles, and achieved a milestone that many could only dream of, and yet she still hoped for that unexpected connection. A small gesture that could turn a lonely day into one filled with warmth and human kindness. The young woman remained seated on the bleachers, her mind wandering as the last graduates were called to the stage. She noticed people slowly beginning to leave, families gathering their things, taking pictures with their children and loved ones. Even as the crowd thinned, she still felt a sense of separation, as if she were a spectator of life rather than a participant. Meanwhile, across the stadium, a single father watched the crowd with a careful eye. He had come to the university with his son, who had just graduated, and they had taken their seats earlier. Unlike the young woman, he had a sense of quiet pride and contentment. His life had been full of challenges, raising a child on his own after losing his partner several years ago. He knew the weight of responsibility, the constant balancing of work, care, and personal life. But in this moment, he was simply present, taking in the atmosphere of celebration and achievement. As he glanced around the stadium, his eyes fell upon the young woman sitting alone. At first, he thought she was just another student who had no one to share the day with. But there was something in her posture, the way she seemed both composed and distant, that caught his attention. He noticed the quiet sadness in her eyes, the subtle movements that betrayed her loneliness despite the busy scene around her. He felt an immediate tug of empathy, recognizing a feeling he himself had known in difficult moments of life. He watched her for a few moments, trying to gauge whether he should approach. He was careful not to intrude, understanding that strangers sometimes do not welcome attention. But the instinct to offer kindness, to break the wall of isolation she seemed trapped behind, was strong. He thought about his son, remembering how he had felt nervous and unsure on his first day at school, how a simple act of kindness from a teacher or peer had made a lasting impression. Perhaps, he reasoned, he could do something similar now. After a brief hesitation, he stood and began walking toward her, his steps deliberate but calm. He wanted his approach to feel natural, not forced. As he drew nearer, he noticed her glancing around the stadium, seemingly searching for someone, anyone, to share a smile or a word. That small movement confirmed his instinct that she could use a friendly presence. When he reached her, he paused at a respectful distance and offered a warm smile. "Hi there," he said gently. "I couldn't help but notice you're sitting here all alone. Congratulations on your graduation. That's a huge accomplishment." The young woman looked up, slightly startled at first. She had not expected anyone to approach her, especially a stranger. She blinked, taking in his kind expression, and nodded. "Thank you," she replied softly. Her voice carried a mix of surprise and hesitation, unsure how to respond to genuine kindness from someone she did not know. He took a small step closer, keeping his tone friendly and non-intrusive. "I know this day can be overwhelming, and sometimes it feels like everyone has someone to celebrate with. I just wanted to say that your achievement is really something to be proud of." His words were simple, sincere, and delivered with a calm presence that made them feel genuine. She felt a small warmth at the sound of his voice. It was unexpected but somehow comforting. For the first time that day, she did not feel invisible. She shifted slightly, a faint smile forming on her lips. It's been a long journey," she admitted. "Sometimes it feels like nobody really notices the effort behind it." He nodded knowingly. "I understand that feeling. Life can be busy, and sometimes people around us are wrapped up in their own lives. But that doesn't diminish what you've accomplished. You've worked hard, and that matters." She found herself relaxing slightly in his presence. There was no judgment, no expectations, just a simple acknowledgement of her efforts. She noticed how natural and easy it felt to speak with him, even though they had just met. He had a way of listening, of making her feel seen without asking for anything in return. It was a small but powerful difference from the usual interactions she had with people in her life. Curiosity and a desire for connection encouraged her to open up a little more. "I guess I've always been surrounded by people, but it never really felt like anyone understood me. Even now, sitting here, I feel kind of invisible." Her voice wavered slightly, but she continued, encouraged by his patient demeanor. He listened attentively, his eyes reflecting empathy. "I know that feeling. Sometimes being surrounded by people doesn't mean you're truly seen. I've raised my son on my own for years, and there were times when I felt the same way. It's not easy, but moments like this remind us how important small gestures of kindness can be." The young woman considered his words, realizing the truth in them. She had spent so much time in pursuit of external validation, forgetting that genuine human connection often came from simple, unassuming acts. She looked at him, noticing the quiet strength in his presence, the ease with which he communicated empathy without demanding attention. It was a stark contrast to the high-pressure, high-expectation world she usually navigated. For a few minutes, they simply shared the space, exchanging small smiles and quiet words. The father glanced toward his son, who was nearby, and then back at her, offering a reassuring nod. She responded with a soft smile, feeling the first genuine sense of comfort she had experienced all day. It was as if a small bridge had formed between them, spanning the gap created by isolation and busyness. He gestured lightly toward the area where his son was sitting. "My son just graduated too," he said. "Would you like to join us? It's a small space, but we'd be happy to have you sit with us for a while." She hesitated, surprised by the invitation. She had spent the day alone, and the idea of suddenly joining a family she had never met felt both thrilling and nerve-wracking. Yet there was something in his tone, a warmth and sincerity that made her feel safe enough to accept. I'd like that," she said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of gratitude and relief. He smiled, stepping aside to allow her to move. She walked carefully across the bleachers, feeling a sense of nervous anticipation. When she reached their space, she noticed the genuine curiosity and friendliness in the father's son. He offered a small wave and a smile, which she returned. The three of them settled into a comfortable rhythm, exchanging light conversation about the ceremony, the weather, and small anecdotes from their lives. As they talked, she felt a growing sense of ease. The father and son did not pry or judge. They simply listened and shared. She found herself laughing at small jokes, nodding at shared observations, and even contributing stories of her own. For the first time that day, she felt included, her presence acknowledged and appreciated. It was a simple interaction, yet it carried a profound impact. The weight of solitude began to lift, replaced by a sense of belonging she had not felt in years. The father shared stories of raising his son alone, the challenges they faced, and the moments of unexpected joy that made it all worthwhile. She listened intently, occasionally offering her thoughts and reflections. She realized that despite the differences in their lives, there were common threads, struggles, triumphs, and the universal desire to feel seen and valued. The conversation flowed naturally, with moments of laughter, understanding, and gentle encouragement. Time passed quickly as they shared stories and experiences. The young woman found herself opening up in ways she had not anticipated. She spoke of her academic journey, the pressures of her family expectations, and the quiet loneliness she often felt. The father and son listened without judgment, their responses thoughtful and empathetic. Each word exchanged built a bridge of trust and connection, transforming a chance encounter into a meaningful human interaction. The father noticed the subtle changes in her demeanor, the way her shoulders relaxed, the spark of interest in her eyes, the softening of the tension in her expression. It was clear that this brief encounter was making a difference. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that a small gesture of kindness could have such a profound impact on someone's day. He had seen it before in his own life, and he was grateful for the opportunity to pass it on. She realized that this interaction was unlike any she had experienced before. There was no expectation, no pressure, no underlying motives, just simple, genuine human connection. It was a reminder that sometimes the most meaningful moments in life come from unexpected sources, from strangers who take the time to see us for who we truly are. As the sun began to descend, casting a warm golden glow over the stadium, they continued talking, enjoying the simple pleasure of each other's company. She felt a sense of gratitude welling up inside her, a recognition that this encounter had given her something invaluable, a glimpse of authentic kindness and understanding. It was a feeling she had longed for but had rarely experienced, and she treasured it deeply. Eventually, the conversation shifted to lighter topics, future plans, aspirations, and the small joys of daily life. She found herself laughing freely, sharing thoughts she had kept to herself for years. The father and son responded with warmth and interest, making her feel included and valued. It was a rare and precious moment of connection, one that would leave a lasting impression on her heart. As the crowd continued to disperse, the young woman realized that the initial loneliness she had felt was no longer as heavy. She had been reminded of the power of simple kindness, the impact of genuine attention, and the importance of human connection. The father's presence, his willingness to reach out, and the warmth of his son's company had transformed her experience of the day from one of isolation to one of belonging. She looked at them, a soft smile on her face, feeling a sense of gratitude and hope. For the first time that day, she felt truly seen, truly acknowledged, and truly connected. It was a small miracle of human interaction, a reminder that even in a world filled with busyness, status, and expectations, genuine kindness could create moments of profound meaning. As they stood to leave, the father gave her a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "It was great to meet you today. Remember, it only takes a small gesture to make a difference in someone's life," he said warmly. She nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate deeply within her. She walked away with a lighter heart, carrying the memory of that simple, unexpected connection with her. The loneliness that had weighed on her throughout the ceremony had been eased, replaced by a newfound appreciation for the small, human gestures that make life meaningful. She knew that this moment would stay with her, a reminder that sometimes strangers can bring the warmth and understanding we need most. The young woman felt a strange but comforting sense of ease as she settled into the small circle with the father and his son. It was as if a subtle shift had occurred, one that she could not fully articulate, but it left her feeling lighter, less burdened by the quiet loneliness she had carried throughout the day. For the first time, the noise of the crowd around her felt distant rather than overwhelming. The sun had begun to descend, painting the sky in gentle shades of orange and pink, and the warmth of the day added a sense of calm to the scene. The father began sharing small stories about his own experiences as a single parent. He spoke of the challenges he faced, the nights he stayed up worrying about the future, the moments when he felt like he could not manage the weight of responsibility, and yet how he found joy in small successes, like seeing his son smile or hearing him laugh. The stories were simple yet deeply human, filled with a raw honesty that resonated with her. She listened attentively, finding herself drawn into the conversation. There was no pretense, no need to impress. It was genuine, heartfelt exchange. She found herself opening up in response, sharing thoughts about her own life that she had kept to herself for years. She spoke about the pressures of her family, the expectations that often felt suffocating, and the loneliness she had grown accustomed to despite being surrounded by people. Her words came slowly at first, careful but gradually with more confidence as she sensed their understanding. The father nodded frequently, acknowledging each thought without judgment. "It's not easy being in the spotlight in one way or another," he said. "People look at you and assume everything is perfect. They don't see the quiet struggles or the moments when you feel completely alone. But those moments are part of life, and acknowledging them is a sign of strength, not weakness." His words struck a chord. She had always felt the pressure to appear composed, to project an image of success and happiness, and yet inside, there had been a deep yearning for connection and understanding. Hearing someone speak so plainly about the complexities of life, about the struggles that often went unseen, felt like a breath of fresh air. It allowed her to drop some of the invisible weight she had been carrying. The son, a young man who had just graduated himself, chimed in occasionally, offering observations from his own perspective. He spoke about the joy he felt seeing his father navigate challenges with resilience, the small moments of laughter and camaraderie they shared at home, and the importance of recognizing and appreciating these seemingly ordinary experiences. She listened, noting how their relationship was built on patience, care, and mutual respect, qualities she had often found lacking in her own social interactions. There was a rhythm to their conversation, a natural ebb and flow that made time feel irrelevant. Laughter mixed with thoughtful pauses, stories interwoven with questions and reflections. She found herself laughing more freely than she had in a long time, her previous stiffness and tension dissolving with each genuine exchange. It was a feeling of belonging she had rarely experienced, a reassurance that connection could happen unexpectedly and without elaborate gestures. At one point, the father shared a story about a time when he and his son had faced a significant challenge, a period when work demands, illness, and personal setbacks all collided. He spoke about the fear and uncertainty that accompanied that time, and how they had leaned on each other for support, even when the world seemed indifferent. The story was candid, filled with vulnerability, yet it carried a subtle message of resilience and hope. She found herself nodding, relating to the sentiment more than she expected. Her own journey had been filled with obstacles, not of survival in the same sense, but of emotional navigation, social expectations, and the quest for genuine understanding. She realized that while their experiences were different, the emotions underlying them, loneliness, hope, fear, Joy were universally human. A gentle breeze passed through the stadium, ruffling the banners and carrying with it the sounds of distant conversations and the faint scent of grass and flowers. The atmosphere felt serene, almost intimate, as if the world had paused briefly to allow this connection to flourish. She took a deep breath, letting herself fully absorb the moment, recognizing it as rare and precious. Encouraged by the warmth of the interaction, she shared memories from her university life, moments of achievement and struggle alike. She spoke of late nights studying, projects that had demanded more than she thought she could give, and fleeting friendships that never quite formed into something lasting. Each story was met with attentive listening and gentle affirmation, reinforcing the sense that she was truly being seen and heard. The father responded with thoughtful reflections, drawing parallels between his experiences and hers, highlighting the importance of perseverance, self-respect, and valuing the people who genuinely care. He spoke about life lessons learned through hardship, the power of empathy, and the significance of small, consistent acts of kindness. His words carried weight, not because they were grand or profound, but because they were grounded in lived experience and sincere intention. She found herself reflecting on her own behavior, the way she had navigated life with a focus on appearances and achievement, sometimes at the expense of authentic relationships. The conversation illuminated a subtle but important truth. That connection, understanding, and empathy often mattered far more than status, wealth, or recognition. It was a perspective that had eluded her in the hustle of her privileged but isolating life. The son offered a playful observation about graduation day traditions, making her laugh genuinely. She realized that this simple laughter, unforced and spontaneous, was something she had missed deeply. It reminded her that joy did not always require grand events or accolades. It could be found in small, shared moments of human presence and understanding. Time seemed to stretch, yet also pass quickly, as they continued talking and sharing. The young woman found herself asking questions about their lives, about the challenges and triumphs of single parenthood, about the small lessons learned from daily experiences. The father answered candidly, revealing the depth of thought and care that guided his actions, while the son added his own youthful insights and humor, enriching the conversation. She noticed how their dialogue shifted naturally from lighthearted topics to more reflective discussions. They talked about dreams, fears, the uncertainty of the future, and the ways in which people navigate their own paths. She felt a growing sense of trust, a realization that the walls she had built around herself could be lowered, at least temporarily, in the presence of genuine empathy. At one point, she shared a particularly vulnerable thought, admitting her fear of never forming meaningful connections despite her achievements. The father nodded, his expression kind and understanding. "Sometimes it takes time," he said softly, "but meeting someone who cares, even for a brief moment, can change how you see yourself in the world. It doesn't have to be permanent to be meaningful." His words resonated deeply. She realized that this interaction, though brief, carried immense significance. It was a reminder that human connection could be unexpected, yet transformative. It was not about grand gestures or elaborate attention, but about sincere acknowledgement, understanding, and care. She felt a sense of gratitude swell within her, a recognition that she had been seen not for her family background or accomplishments, but for her authentic self. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the stadium, the young woman felt a shift within herself. The heaviness she had carried throughout the day had eased, replaced by a sense of warmth and belonging. She realized that the simple act of someone noticing her, of engaging with her with kindness and genuine interest, had made a profound impact on her emotional state. The father suggested they take a short walk, pointing out the beauty of the campus as the day transitioned to evening. She agreed, feeling a newfound comfort in their company. As they walked, conversation flowed effortlessly, filled with observations about nature, reflections on the day, and small anecdotes from each of their lives. The simplicity of the moment underscored its depth. Connection did not require elaborate circumstances, only openness and empathy. She shared thoughts about her aspirations, the hopes she had for the future, and the uncertainty that often accompanied those dreams. The father listened intently, offering encouragement without imposing his own views. The son added playful commentary, keeping the conversation light and enjoyable. It was a balance of seriousness and levity, reflecting the natural rhythm of human interaction that she had longed for. During their walk, She noticed how their presence grounded her. The father's calm demeanor and steady attention provided a sense of stability, while the son's youthful energy brought lightness and spontaneity. She felt that her own energy shifted in response, becoming more open, relaxed, and engaged. The quiet isolation she had felt earlier in the day seemed like a distant memory, replaced by the shared experience of being fully present with others. As they returned to the bleachers, she felt a sense of gratitude and reflection. The father's approach, the invitation to join them, and the shared conversation had transformed what began as a lonely, distant day into a meaningful, human-centered experience. She understood now that genuine connection could come unexpectedly and need not be confined by social norms, status, or prior acquaintance. Sitting once more, she took a deep breath, feeling the lingering warmth of the interaction. She realized that this moment, this simple exchange of words, stories, and laughter, had given her something invaluable, a sense of belonging, a reminder of the importance of empathy, and a renewed belief in the power of human kindness. It was a turning point, a moment she would carry with her beyond the stadium, beyond the graduation, into the wider chapters of her life. The father spoke gently, reminding her to treasure small connections and to recognize the subtle ways people can impact each other's lives. She nodded, absorbing the lesson and feeling a quiet determination to seek authentic connections in her own world. The son added a light-hearted comment about how memorable the day had been, prompting another genuine laugh from her. As the evening deepened, they shared one last moment of quiet reflection together, acknowledging the fleeting yet meaningful nature of the encounter. She felt a sense of peace settle over her, a clarity that came from being truly seen and appreciated even for a short while. It was a rare gift, one that required no material wealth, no social status, only presence, empathy, and shared humanity. Eventually, the father and son prepared to leave, offering warm smiles and parting words. "It was wonderful to meet you today," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. She thanked him, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. "I'll remember this moment," she said softly, realizing that it was more than just an interaction. It was a lesson in kindness, connection, and the value of simply being there for someone. She watched them leave, her heart lighter and her mind reflective. The sense of loneliness that had overshadowed her entire graduation was now softened by the warmth of an unexpected friendship. She realized that sometimes the most meaningful human connections appear when least expected, carried not by grand gestures but by simple, genuine acts of care. And as she looked back at the empty stadium, she felt a quiet assurance that life could hold such moments for her again, moments where she would be seen, understood, and appreciated for who she truly was. The young woman felt a growing sense of warmth as she continued to spend time with the single dad and his son. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, and she found herself opening up in ways she had rarely done before. The father's gentle encouragement and the son's playful observations created a space where she could share her thoughts freely without fear of judgment. It was a feeling she had longed for, a simple yet profound sense of connection that had eluded her in so many social situations. They decided to take a short walk around the campus, moving away from the crowded bleachers to a quieter area, where the grass was greener and the trees cast long, comforting shadows. The father spoke about the importance of taking moments to appreciate small things in life. The sound of birds, the feel of the breeze, and the way sunlight filtered through the leaves. His words were simple but carried a wisdom that resonated deeply with her. She realized how often she had overlooked these small joys, caught up in the pressures of achievement and appearance. As they walked, she shared stories from her university years, not just the academic successes but the personal challenges, moments of self-doubt and instances when she felt misunderstood. She admitted how often she had felt isolated despite being surrounded by people, how social events often left her feeling more alone than before. The father listened attentively, nodding and responding with thoughtful comments that made her feel seen and understood. His son occasionally added light-hearted remarks, which brought laughter and eased any lingering tension. The young woman began to notice the subtle ways in which genuine care could transform a person's experience. She had been used to interactions that were often transactional, influenced by status or social expectation. Here there was no hidden motive, no need to impress or perform. The simplicity of it was striking. She felt a freedom to be herself, unburdened by expectations, and it brought a sense of relief she hadn't anticipated. They found a bench under a large tree, and they sat, continuing their conversation. The father shared insights about resilience and the lessons life had taught him through his experiences as a single parent. He spoke about the value of empathy, the importance of listening, and the impact that small acts of kindness could have on someone's life. She reflected on her own life, realizing how much she had missed out on by not prioritizing authentic relationships and human connection over appearances and social validation. She felt comfortable enough to talk about her family, her father's busy life, and the emotional distance that often accompanied their wealth and status. She confessed her fears of never finding someone who truly understood her, someone who could see past the surface and recognize her for who she was. The father listened without interruption, his calm presence offering reassurance and validation. His responses were gentle, insightful, and empathetic, making her feel that her feelings were legitimate and worth acknowledging. The son shared stories about his own experiences, his relationship with his father, and the ways they had supported each other through challenges. She noticed the genuine affection between them, the mutual respect and understanding that had developed through shared experiences. It made her reflect on the relationships in her own life and what she might seek going forward. She realized that connection was not about perfection or status, but about sincerity, presence, and mutual support. They discussed hopes and dreams, not just for the future, but for the small everyday moments that made life meaningful. The father emphasized the importance of gratitude, mindfulness, and the recognition of people who make a positive impact. She began to see her own life through a different lens, understanding that the meaningful connections she had been missing could be cultivated with intention and openness. She felt inspired to approach her relationships differently, to value authenticity over appearance, and empathy over superficial acknowledgement. Laughter flowed naturally between them as they shared light-hearted moments and playful observations about the day. The young woman felt a lightness in her heart that she had not experienced in a long time. The conversation was not just comforting but invigorating, giving her energy and perspective. She noticed how a single interaction could create ripples of emotional change, shifting her mood and outlook in subtle yet profound ways. The father spoke about challenges they had faced recently, including moments of doubt and fear, and how they had navigated them together. She listened with empathy, drawing parallels to her own experiences even though the specifics were different. She realized that human emotions were universal. Fear, hope, joy, and loneliness could be understood and shared across different life circumstances. It was a powerful realization that strengthened her sense of connection and belonging. She began to share lighter memories, moments of triumph in her academic journey, funny incidents with classmates, and small personal victories. The father and son responded with genuine interest, laughing and asking questions that encouraged her to expand on her stories. It was a dynamic exchange full of energy and warmth, creating a space where she could express herself fully and without reservation. As the afternoon faded into evening, the sky painted with warm hues of orange and pink, the young woman felt a sense of peace settle over her. The simple act of walking and talking with them, sharing thoughts and stories, had alleviated much of the loneliness she had carried. She felt a renewed sense of hope that genuine human connection was possible, even unexpectedly, and that moments of kindness and empathy could have lasting impact. They discussed the importance of supporting each other, of listening, and of being present in ways that mattered. The father emphasized that sometimes the smallest gestures, a smile, a kind word, a shared laugh, could change someone's day or even their perspective. She reflected on her own life, realizing how often she had overlooked these opportunities, focused on appearances or social performance rather than authentic engagement. She began to see the value of vulnerability, of allowing oneself to be seen, and the courage it took to connect with others genuinely. The father's calm and empathetic manner, combined with his son's playful energy, created a balance that made her feel safe and encouraged. She recognized that trust and connection could grow in unexpected ways, through shared experiences, honest conversation, and genuine interest. They took a slow walk back toward the bleachers, the evening air cool and refreshing. Conversation continued naturally, weaving between reflections on the day, aspirations, and the lessons they had learned from life. She noticed how her perspective had shifted subtly but meaningfully. She felt more open, more attuned to the importance of human connection, and more aware of the impact small acts of kindness could have on someone's emotional state. Sitting back in the bleachers, she felt a sense of closure for the day's earlier loneliness. The father and son's presence had transformed her experience, turning what had begun as a quiet, isolating ceremony into a meaningful and emotionally rich interaction. She realized that connection was not something to be forced or measured by status, wealth, or appearances, but something that grew naturally through empathy, presence, and genuine interest. The father offered one final reflection, reminding her to cherish small moments, to seek meaningful relationships, and to approach life with openness and kindness. She nodded, feeling the truth of his words resonate deeply within her. The son added a playful remark about how memorable the day had become, prompting her to laugh again and feel a sense of lightness she had not experienced in years. As they prepared to leave, she felt a quiet gratitude. The simple interaction, the shared stories, and the genuine attention had provided her with a sense of belonging and warmth that she would carry forward. She understood that these moments of connection were rare but invaluable, capable of transforming one's perspective and emotional state in subtle yet profound ways. She watched them walk away, their figures slowly blending into the crowd, and felt a lingering sense of peace. The day had begun with isolation and quiet longing, but it had evolved into a meaningful experience filled with warmth, understanding, and human connection. She realized that sometimes the most profound moments came unexpectedly, through small gestures and sincere engagement. It was a reminder that life's true richness lay not in achievement alone, but in the connections we cultivate, the empathy we offer, and the presence we bring to each other's lives. Sitting in the bleachers as the sun finally set, she felt a renewed sense of hope and perspective. She understood that human connection could appear when least expected, and that simple acts of kindness had the power to create lasting emotional impact. The loneliness she had felt earlier was now tempered by a sense of belonging and understanding, and she knew that this experience would influence how she approached her relationships moving forward. She took a deep breath, absorbing the quiet beauty of the campus as the day came to a close. The warmth of the interaction with the father and his son lingered, leaving her with a sense of contentment and inspiration. She realized that authentic human connections could transform ordinary moments into meaningful experiences, and she felt motivated to seek and nurture such connections in her own life.